Thank you so much, Senator. I actually didn't have any, but the opposition, I feel compelled to say this. So I just want to be clear about driver's authorization cards of what it actually does and what it doesn't. This policy does not grant legal status. It does not give undocumented immigrants the same rights or privileges that American citizens have. They can't vote. They aren't eligible for most public benefits. What it does do is it allows people who are already here, who are already part of our communities, to take a driving test, register a car, buy insurance just like anyone else on the road. And at the bottom of this, it's keeping our communities safer. Opponents say that it makes it easier for undocumented immigrants, but the truth is life is not easy as an undocumented immigrant. A driver's authorization card is about safety. It is about accountability. It is not about privilege. It does not say that we are saying people can come here and break the rules. So a piece of misinformation is that being present in the US without proper documentation is not a criminal offense under federal law. It is a civil one that can lead to deportation, yes, but it is not a crime. So when critics use language like illegal or criminal, they are not only wrong, they are continuing the fueling fear and stereotypes and criminalizing our communities. So let's name it for what it is. It's not about policy, it's about fear. It's about race, and it's about the refusal to see immigrant families as members of our community. Nevadans can do better than that. We can pass laws that are rooted in facts and not fear. We can pass laws rooted in safety, not stigma. And we can pass laws rooted in dignity, not division. So I just want to say driver's authorization cards aren't about rewarding people for breaking the law. It is about making our state safer. Thank you.
And members of the committee, my name is Janine Hansen. I'm the state president of Nevada Families for Freedom. Every session since this was first initiated in 2013, they have expanded the driver's authorization card, making it easier and easier to be an illegal alien in Nevada. This time they want the renewal time from 4 to 8 years, which will be equal to the requirement for citizens. Is there no benefit for being an American citizen? We continue to be concerned about expanding the driver's authorization card. There are many costs regarding illegal immigration in the United States. In testimony before the U.S. Senate Committee on Budget, Robert Rector from the Heritage Foundation said illegal aliens receive $84 to $94 billion more in government benefits and services than they pay in taxes. In a study 20 years ago by the Federation for American Immigration Reform, they estimated that the annual fiscal burden on Nevada taxpayers associated with illegal immigration to be about $630 million. This equates to an annual cost of about 763. Of course, 20 years later, it's much higher. The cost of illegal immigration to Nevadans and to the United States is very high. And I think it's very important that we realize that every time we make it easier to have a driver's authorization card, we make being an illegal alien easier in Nevada. We oppose this bill. Thank you.
And I will ditto the comments made by the previous commentators. I will mention, though, there's also the concern of remittances, money being sent abroad. That's another impact we got to understand. Now, we hear a lot of people talk about that they need transportation. Now, remember, this is a renewal change. So if there's a serious problem, what about getting around through rideshare? What about biking, walking, taking mass transit? We could improve mass transit instead. The heart of the issue is we believe that this will increase the incentive for people to not follow federal immigration law. So we urge you to vote no. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Lynn Chapman, L-Y-N-N-C-H-A-P-M-A-N, and I'm the state treasurer of the Independent American Party. Just to let you know, on the opinion poll, the opposition to this bill is 89%. We have people from all around the world coming to our country, and we don't know who they are and what they're up to. But we do have many good people coming here with no ill intent on our people or our country. But we also have gangs, terrorists, and criminals coming here. We don't know who is who, and that's the problem. Giving driver's licenses to people when we don't have any way to know who they are is difficult enough. But now you want to give driver's licenses to anyone and everyone and to extend the time in between expiration dates. They would have all the same privileges as American citizens. American citizens are told to have the real ID by May 7th, which is 2 days from now. There is a lot of documentation that we as Americans have to provide to prove who we are. Do illegals have to provide the same documentation? I seriously doubt it. Extending the time between expiration dates is the wrong action to take. We American citizens 65 years of age and older don't even have the privilege of an extended time between expiration dates. We only get 4 years at a time. Discrimination, anyone? Vote no on AB 140. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would note that this is already existing law, and this is a driver authorization card rather than a driver's license. And it's really just talking about the renewals. But we thank everyone for your comments, and we're so happy you're calling in. And with that, broadcast next caller.
I'm Kimberly Fergus, FERGUS. I respectfully oppose AB 140. This bill removes the fixed 4-year expiration date for driver authorization cards and gives full control to the DMV to set the term by regulation. That's a serious shift. It hands over a key public policy decision to a state agency with no legislative oversight. Driver authorization cards started out somewhat distinct from standard licenses, but are increasingly becoming almost alike. They were created with specific limitations, and changing the renewal period through regulation risks blurring those lines and weakening accountability. This bill opens the door to inconsistency and confusion for both applicants and law enforcement. Renewal times should remain clear, fixed and controlled by legislature, not fluctuating at the discretion of a state agency. I urge you to vote no on AB 40 unless those safeguards are restored. Thank you. Have a great afternoon.
Hi, this is Katrina, IVANO Frank. I strongly urge you to oppose this bill. Once again, I find myself talking about bills that do not help Nevada citizens, but they help other people other than citizens of Nevada. It is mind-boggling to me how many times the people that are supposed to make the laws and hopefully follow the law mentioned that those people were the illegal aliens that are getting the driver's permit were going to work. As far as I know, they're not allowed to work in United States. They don't have work authorization. They are, and they keep saying we're not criminals. You are. For all intents and purposes, you broke the law. Your first step on our soil was to break the law. So yeah, you're not violent criminals, but for all intents and purposes, you are criminals. You didn't even bother to learn English. So I don't think we should be making it easy on people that don't respect our country enough to learn the language to talk. And you can hear my accent, it's a heavy accent. I come from Europe. I learned English before coming to this country out of respect. And I was only coming on working this and then switched to other things. But still, it is very sad for me to hear that the people that's supposed to make the laws for Nevadans and protect Nevadans are not doing so. They're trying to use Nevadans and taxpayers and law-abiding citizens to provide security for people that are not Nevadans or Americans for that matter. I'm very saddened. We have so many problems in Nevada. The legislators would be concentrated on helping Nevada.
Ms. Ivanov, thank you so much. We're about 2.5 minutes of your 2 minutes, but we thank you so much for your comments today.
Okay.
And
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Janine Hansen. I'm the state president of Nevada Families for Freedom. I first want to say how much I appreciate Senator Flores and Assemblyman De Silva. They've always been very kind to me, and even though we often disagree, we always get along, and I appreciate that very much. We have some concerns about this bill. In some places, there is a severe shortage of officers, and not many have been hired. I'm talking about an article that was in California. They passed their law in 2023. This article is from 2024. It says some of the state's largest law enforcement agencies, including San Francisco, Oakland, and Bakersfield, said they haven't hired new officers under the law, and part of that is because they have legal concerns over whether a non-citizen can possess a firearm. Another issue, which you've already heard, is about background checks. They may be able to do a background check of what the person did in the United States, but they may not be able to do a complete background check of what they did in a foreign country. That information may not be available according to a report by Cal Matters. And so that criminal history may be unavailable, and that's a great concern to us. Representative Kat Kamick from the U.S. Congress in 2024 introduced a bill to prohibit federal funds at agencies employing non-citizens in law enforcement. Under the current administration, this could become a reality, which I would think would be a big concern for law enforcement if they were to lose funds over this issue. We talked about baby steps today. Well, I've been here long enough to know that that's the beginning of opening something up for much greater access in the future. I've seen it repeatedly on many, many bills that they start this way and then they expand and expand and expand, and I have concerns about that. There is a difference between healthcare and law enforcement. We need to feel very confident about law enforcement, knowing our laws and knowing what it is to be an American. We want law enforcement to be American citizens, and our concerns, I've expressed our concerns. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Good morning. This is Lynn Chapman, LYNNCHAPMAN, and I'm the state treasurer of the Independent American Party. And I know and agree with the part of the law that's in place now that people who have served in our military can become law enforcement. However, I was laughing because I thought, gee whiz, I remember a few years back when gang members were going into the military to learn more about military ways and military operations and such, and then going back into their gangs to use that against Americans and American citizens and the U.S. We talk about small steps, but I always notice that the small steps in our state legislature usually turn into bigger steps from session to session. In Virginia, DACA beneficiaries they were pushing them to become police officers, including positions such as chief of police, deputy sheriff, and jail officers, which created a problem or a situation in which illegals can enforce U.S. law, and in doing so can arrest and take into custody U.S. citizens and legal permanent residents, which is really interesting because DACA beneficiaries can serve as police officers, but there's a problem when federal law generally bars illegals from possessing firearms. We have to remember that there's problems with undermining the rule of law that we already have in place, and sorry, and threat to the general public. General public needs to have confidence in their officers. Those people are sworn to protect them and uphold the law. They need to be upstanding citizens themselves. And how can we know if we don't even know who these people really are sometimes? Some of the people have no documentation when they come here, and some of the foreign countries that they're coming from don't have information on them. So how can we really know who some of these people are? So I have a problem with Section 2, number 2. Has been employed as a peace officer in another state. maybe they were vetted in the other state enough to get into law enforcement, and then they come here. I'm hoping that we don't open up a huge can of worms. We need to be very, very careful about all of this. The opinion shows that most people, 96% of the people that were doing the opinion on this, were against this bill. So let's be very careful in what we are going to do and moving forward. Please vote no. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Michael Ryan, Michaelryan. I'm a longtime resident of Nevada and a Marine Corps veteran. Please vote no on SB 155. In Nevada, to work as a peace officer, you must be a citizen of the United States. People who are not United States citizens should not be serving as peace officers in our great state. It is very difficult for law enforcement to completely vet the criminal background of foreign nationals. Please vote no on Senate Bill 155. Thank you very much for your time.
Good morning, Chair and Committee. My name is Jim DeGraffenreid, JIMDEGRAFFENREID. I'm Nevada's Republican National Committee man here today in opposition to SB 155. In the states that currently allow non-citizens to serve as police officers, I believe that all except California require that candidates be lawful permanent residents of the U.S. Even as amended, however, SB 155 still allows temporary residents with work authorization to serve. For public protection, detailed background checks are necessary for those who serve in positions of public trust, such as law enforcement. Existing law does allow U.S. military veterans to apply, and they have had appropriate background checks. However, because SB 155 expands eligibility to temporary residents, we have concern about how this will be accomplished in those cases. We appreciate Washoe County's comments earlier, as their agency is more familiar than anyone with the challenges posed by such background checks. We have public safety concerns with this legislation, which is shared by 96% of the more than 1,400 individuals who have shared their opinion on the legislative website, and we ask that you reject SB 155. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair. While everybody's very sympathetic to the whole concept of this, I haven't heard of a single case of this being done. Can you guys give me even a single case of ICE raiding any public school or any school for that matter in Nevada?
Thank you so much. Cecilia Gonzalez, District 16 for the record. We have not. So currently this is the policy for Washoe and Clark County school districts. This is where we got this policy. And what we are attempting to do, or what the intent is, to make sure that every school and every child, regardless of where they go in Nevada, has the same protection, if you will. This is currently what is the federal standard. We have not seen this happen in Nevada, and the hope and the goal and the intent is to prevent that from happening, right? I think we've seen plenty of examples across the country. We've just named one earlier that happened in Los Angeles. I can think of earlier this year of the school in Chicago where teachers did not let immigration in. I've heard from countless constituents, peers. I'm also an educator, about how scared us as educators are and what are we gonna do in that moment. And so this is really a response to some of the concerns that have been happening over the last couple of months at the federal level.
I got it, and I understand the political ramifications of what the bill is trying to do as well. But the thing is, this fanning of the flames that are making kids terrified in Nevada schools, you just mentioned Washoe and Clark already have this policy in place. I represent several of those other counties, the other 15 counties. I would bet they have very, very similar policies in place already. If not, I'd be shocked. So if we're going to be concerned about the fear factor for these kids, it seems like we're fanning a flame for a flame that doesn't exist. I mean, there's zero evidence that any kid's ever had an ICE agent show up even in any public school in Nevada, or as far as I know elsewhere. And if they did, they're already breaking Nevada law.
Cecilia Gonzalez, for the record, thank you so much. I think that's incorrect. We actually have heard of FBI agents and other federal organizations that have been going to unaccompanied minors, just like you heard about what happened in LA. We have gotten reports of that happening here, showing up to foster parents' homes, asking permission to check on the child when there's really no reason. They don't do welfare checks. It's not in their purview to be doing that. However, they are saying that they are doing that to obtain access to the unaccompanied minor and or undocumented person and or family. So we do know, Senator, that is happening in our communities. We do know that our children are afraid. This is not we are just making things up about children being afraid. I'm an educator. Assemblymember Torres Fawcett is an educator. Senator Cruz Crawford is an educator. These are conversations that we've been been having with our families. Students are afraid. I know several families that will be self-deporting from UNR after this semester. I know families that are not coming to school. I know families and parents that have contacted us saying, we're afraid to go to the bus stop because we are afraid of being targeted. So I don't think that maybe in your counties, you maybe have not have heard of it, or maybe in the areas that you represent have not heard of it, but families are scared. This is not something that we are just getting out of thin air. People are scared that this is going to be happening, and we know it is happening across the country, and we're really trying to get ahead of that. And if other school districts that I have not heard of have a similar policy, I would be excited and happy about that, and happy that, you know, just because a student goes to school in Clark or Washoe County doesn't mean that they don't get the same protection if they are in, let's say, Douglas County or Nye County, right? And so I would be excited to see the folks come to support at this bill if they do have that measure in place.
Okay, well, I got that, and I appreciate that, but I would also point out the bill doesn't deal with FBI stops at bus stops or going to bus stops or foster care. This is specifically targeting public schools. And consequently, we're making a problem into worrying people where it's not going to happen anyway. It's already against the law. Now, is there any law that prevents the FBI from going to a bus stop or just deal with bus stops or anywhere outside of public schools?
Cecilia Gonzalez, District 16 for the record. Thank you so much for the question. I am not aware of any laws that state what the FBI can and cannot do.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Chair Scheibel and committee. My name is Joshua Skaggs, and I'm the Legislative Affairs Director for the Nevada Republican Party, here today in opposition to AB 217. On Friday, we testified against a similar bill, AJR 9, which is a partisan political statement not based on any legitimate fear of law enforcement. We opposed it because the first resolving clause urges the federal government to not enforce federal law, which is inappropriate. It is also unnecessary, as the legislation requested in the resolution has already been introduced by congressional Democrats. AB 217, however, is a greater danger to our school employees, as it would actually place in Nevada law a prohibition against allowing federal officials to enter school grounds or to share any information about a pupil or a pupil's household with federal agents engaged in investigation or enforcement of immigration laws. Anyone who violates AB 217 would be charged with a misdemeanor for the second or subsequent violation. The issue here is that complying with AB 217 as amended could place an individual in violation of 18 U.S. Code Section 1512, which provides for fines and up to 20 years of imprisonment for obstructing an official proceeding, and depending on the circumstances, could also place them in violation of 8 U.S. Code Section 1324, which provides for fines and imprisonment for anyone who, quote, knowing or in reckless disregard of the fact that an alien has come to, entered, or remains in the United States in violation of law and conceals, harbors, or shields from detection, or attempts to conceal, harbor, or shield from detection such alien in any place, including any building or any means of transportation, end quote. AB 217 does state that individuals may cooperate if there is a lawful order or a warrant issued by a court. So at best, the bill may just be a partisan political propaganda similar to AJR 9, but at worst, it could place school employees in an untenable situation where they have to choose between violating state laws or federal laws. We oppose this bill in either case. Thank you very much.
We believe that ICE coming into these kinds of places is harsh, and it's certainly not the style that it should be done. However, we share many of the concerns as given by Senator Hansen. And first of all, thank you guys so much for having this meeting. Good afternoon. However, there has to be a penalty for not following federal law. We're very concerned that nowadays elected officials care more about the well-being of non-citizens over American citizens, not to mention the well-funded NGOs that surround them. The fact is that we believe that there's a possibility that this may shield people who are awaiting deportation orders and have to be removed out of the country. Not to mention, we don't hear by the people who support this bill on, okay, you don't like this plan, but what is the consequence for not following federal law? Should we fine and audit employers? Should we tax remittances? Why hasn't a similar bill being brought in a legislative session 5 to 15 years ago? I mean, keep in mind, President Obama still holds the record of deporting the most amount of people than any other president in American history. Think about it. And when it comes to unauthorized immigration, let's not forget about the impacts that it has in our public schools. Perhaps the high student-teacher ratios, the extra resources and time needed on English language services, the overall performance. So even if this policy were to take effect, what about all the benefits that may come as a result of this? And this will also discourage future unlawful immigration. So other than that, we'd like to thank you for bringing this bill forward. Hope you guys are having a good day. And please vote no on this bill. Great pleasure.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Kimberly Fergus, Fergus. This is mind-boggling. However, I strongly oppose AB 217 because this bill is not about protecting students. It's a political dig at the current administration. There's no record of ICE storming Nevada schools. Why pass a law that criminalizes educators for helping law enforcement? This bill punishes teachers and staff, law-abiding citizens for following their conscience and cooperating with authorities. Meanwhile, it protects individuals who actively breaking immigration law. You're sending the wrong message to our children. That laws don't matter, and those upholding them will be punished. As lawmakers, your responsibility is to stand on the side of public safety and the rule of law, not create sanctuary loopholes in our schools. This bill totally tips the scales of justice in the wrong direction. And I really urge you to vote no on AB 217. And the last thing that I do want to say, because I've been watching this, you know, I need to pick my jaw up off the floor on how many of these kids, you're promoting kids to testify on this, and they have no business doing that. I'm just vote no, please. Thank you. Have a good day.
As an educator and as the chair of the Nevada Latino Caucus, I stand before you today with a deep sense of responsibility, not just to my students, but to every family who entrusts their children in our schools and every individual who seeks solace in our houses of worship. AGR 9 will urge Congress to protect sensitive locations like churches and schools from immigration enforcement actions. Let me be clear. Schools and places of worship are not just buildings. These are sanctuary places where children learn, families gather, and communities find hope and healing. Now, the threat of immigration raids looms over our classrooms and sanctuaries. Picture what this means for a child crippled by anxiety every morning, dreading the possibility that a parent may not be there to pick them up. Imagine families wrestling with fear, forced to choose between their faith and their safety. This is not a distant or abstract concern. It is our constituents' reality. As a teacher, it is deeply concerning and frankly heartbreaking that families feel compelled to keep their children at home out of fear. No child should ever be forced to sacrifice their education or their fundamental sense of safety because their family lives in fear. Children already carry the heavy burden of fearing school shootings and navigating the challenges of growing up, and now we are forcing them to bear the unnecessary additional weight of fearing of immigration raids in the very places where they should feel the safest. This unbearable anxiety steals childhood, disrupts learning, and fractures the very foundation of family and community. Today, we must urge Congress to codify these protections and send a clear message that our schools and our churches are off limits. Let us affirm that every child deserves to learn, every family deserves to worship, and every person deserves dignity and safety.
My name is Attar Hasibullah, first name spelled Athar, last name Haseebullah. I serve as the executive director for the American Civil Liberties Union of Nevada, and by background, I'm a civil rights attorney. Our organization focuses on a litany of constitutional liberties and rights that are afforded to all people. And at the core of these issues right now is the federal government's intervention into states' liberty, specifically when it comes to immigration enforcement. I'm going to be very brief and sharing just a few of the technicals here, and then happy to take any questions. The first portion with respect to what the actual resolution does is it urges Congress to limit against immigration enforcement actions at public schools as well as houses of worship. So it is a limited resolution to urge Congress to do that. And the reason why it was drafted as a limited resolution specifically was because during the last 90 days, this issue has become increasingly politicized. Now, the reason why we're specifically seeking for Congress to do this is because this is not state and local law enforcement that's engaged in these types of activities. This is the federal government doing so. And the federal government's done so repeatedly in other communities, causing fear, panic, leading to detentions of both people who may be undocumented, but also people who are visa holders, green card holders, and U.S. citizens. This has caused widespread panic all across the country. If we look at Los Angeles, ICE officers actually arrived at a school a couple months ago to speak to children under the guise of having consent from their parents. 2 U.S. senators from California 2 weeks ago issued a letter to that same department to say they are increasingly troubled by the actions that ICE has undertaken in effectuating those types of actions.
I believe that this system is pretty harsh. It's not pretty. It's not nice. And I do sympathize with supporters, and I'm willing to talk to them. However, there has to be a level of fairness, okay? Because otherwise, if you don't follow immigration law, what's the consequence? There has to be, okay? Just like if I run a red light or something like that. We believe that going to churches and schools is not the best way. We believe the most appropriate way is to audit and fine every employer who is not hiring through a legal fashion. Remittances are also important. Birthright citizenship is another issue. Senator Harry Reid spoke out against it in 1993. We do appreciate the contributions by legal or non-legal immigration. However, they do have an impact on the capacity of schools, performance, and a lot of other factors, such as language barriers and so forth. My main concern is not the migrants. My main concern is the elected officials. And it seems that many elected officials put their necessities over American citizens. I don't appreciate that. It's okay to sympathize, but we are asking for fairness. We do believe that unauthorized immigrants provide a lot of taxpayer support. However, I have not seen the data that shows the taxes that they pay exceed the services that are required not only from them, but from their U.S. citizen children. At a protest that was done about 2 weeks ago, many of the supporters of these arrivals claimed that they picked the crops. However, the last time I checked, the Las Vegas Valley hardly has any agricultural areas, and yet we have one of the highest rate of these individuals. We believe that to handle this situation can be done through guest worker visas. We do support their hard work, not just here, but in all Western countries. And no, I do not believe our main source of crime problems is from unauthorized immigrants, although, let's be honest, not everybody is a good apple. So we urge you to please think about this bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Hojjaty.
My name is Joshua Skaggs, and I'm the Legislative Affairs Director for the Nevada Republican Party here in opposition to AJR 9. The Nevada Republican Party opposes AJR 9 because it is a partisan political statement not based on a legitimate fear of inappropriate law enforcement. The first resolving clause indicates that Nevada urges the federal government to not enforce federal law, and we believe it is inappropriate to ask the state government to ignore the law at any place or time. The resolution received a completely partisan vote in the Assembly, and we urge its rejection by the Senate. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Lorena Biasotti. That's Lorenabiassotti, and I'm speaking for myself. I want to state that I am impressed by the sudden concern to allow for respectful worship of God. I would hope we keep this support in reverence to the biblical principles I have heard cited by our legislators. That said, I challenge you to Google the number of ICE raids that have happened in churches and schools. There have been 0. It is not happening. The Department of Homeland Security has instructed officers to use common sense, and they have. We must be careful of the fear-mongering being taken up by our mainstream media to pit citizens against the Trump administration and its policies. The truth is, these policies have removed dangerous rapists and murderers and will make our community safer for our families. Now I challenge you to Google the women murdered by illegal aliens. We do not want any family to suffer the horrible fate like that of a young college girl jogging on her college campus, raped and savagely murdered by getting her head repeatedly smashed in with a rock, like Laken Riley was. And I don't like to go into detail about it, but sometimes we forget the horror that can really happen. Or to suffer the fate of Jocelyn Nungaray. I notice a lot of immigrant callers speaking in support of this resolution. Please remember that criminals who have recently crossed the border or anywhere else don't discriminate by race. This young Hispanic 12-year-old girl could have easily been your daughter or your sister. By the way, President Trump honored her memory by naming a wildlife refuge after her. Allowing safe havens for illegals can potentially create a safe haven for criminals, just like the previous caller was stating. Be wise, don't allow yourself to get lost in the rhetoric. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and members of this committee. I'm Kimberly Fergus, FERGUS. I rise in strong opposition to AJR 9. While this resolution may appear compassionate on the surface, it is a political message urging Congress to prohibit federal immigration enforcement in public spaces, specifically schools and places of worship. Let's be clear, this is not about education or religion. This is about creating protected spaces for immigration lawbreakers. ICE does not, I'm going to repeat this again, ICE does not conduct random sweeps. Their presence is typically based on a credible intelligence of lawful warrants. Are we saying that if someone commits fraud, evades deportation, or breaks immigration laws, they are untouchable if they walk into a church or attend school functions? This sends a message that some people are above the federal law, depending on where you choose to be. To me, that is dangerous. We're not protecting children, we're shielding adults from accountability. Moreover, using sacred institutions as political shields not only blurs the lines between law, religion, and education, it invites misuse of those institutions. Congress should not be pressured by states to block federal law enforcement for fulfilling its duty. This resolution is symbolic. Yes, it is also reckless, divisive, and legally troubling. And I am going to say this because a lot of things have been said that aren't true, but let me remind you and remember what happened in November of 2024. I urge you to reject AJR 9. Thank you.